The Lost Mermaid-Chapter 17. As I stood by my open window late the next night, a choir of crickets chirped loudly in the darkness. The stars were shrouded in clouds, casting an eerie atmosphere over the scene. Despite the warmth of the night, I shivered with nerves, fear stiffening my spine. This was the night Emerald was meant to escape, and I prayed I wasn't too late. Earlier that day, when I had visited her, she had been barely breathing. I knew her fate rested in my hands. Taking a deep breath, I set my jaw and climbed through the window, shutting it silently behind me. There were no signs of life as I walked past the house, mud sliding under my steps. I usually would have cringed, but tonight I ignored it. I had more pressing matters to fix my mind upon. Jared was waiting for me, having pulled his truck up near the pond. He nodded soberly as I hurried towards him. "Is your dad gone?" he asked. I nodded. "He and the boys left this morning." "Okay. We need somewhere to put Emerald," I said. "I was thinking of a trough. What about that?" He jerked his head in the direction of an old cow trough in the pasture. I studied it for a few moments, then nodded. "That'll work." With a grunt, we pulled the trough out of the dirt and lugged it over to the truck bed, straining with the weight. I could feel my arms shaking with the effort as we heaved it up, but I pushed through. Jared was clearly doing most of the heavy lifting. As we worked, I couldn't help but admire his well-defined muscles, honed over years of hard labor on the farm. "Wow," I collapsed against the side of the truck, massaging my wrists. "You are strong." He flashed me a warm smile and shrugged. Once I regained my breath, I said, "I'll get Emerald. Can you grab the hose and fill it up?" With a nod of approval, he watched as I carefully adjusted the golden tiara on my forehead before I took a deep breath and dove into the pond. Although it was difficult to see in the darkness, the mermaid tears on the crown emitted a soft glow, illuminating the water around me. I glanced around to orient myself and then swam towards Emerald's nest. She looked deathly pale, her tail flowing limply in the current, still unconscious. I fought back worry as I gripped her under her arms and carried her through the moonlit waters. After I left her sanctuary, I had the feeling to return. I hesitated, deciding. I needed to go now, but the feeling persisted. Sighing, I set her down gently and turned around. Inside, I scanned her sleeping area, wondering what had brought me back. A flash of green caught my eye, her seaweed blanket. I freed it and swam out, picking Emerald up once again. Her head nodded as if it had no strength, falling to the side as I lifted her. I glided towards the bank emerging from the water, brushing Emerald's hair from her face. Jared's eyes widened in amazement as he looked at her, clearly surprised. To be honest, I was still getting used to the sight myself. "How did you do that?" Jared asked. "I thought you were a goner. You were down there for 5 minutes." I gestured to the tiara I was wearing. "This gives me special powers. I can breathe with it," I said. "Okay," he said warily. "Let me take her." Tenderly, he removed Emerald from my grasp, cradling her like a newborn. I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude towards him, for his calm presence, which seemed to have a stabilizing effect on me. With him by my side, I felt reassured that everything was going to be okay. I took off the tiara and shook out my legs as they separated, then stood up, supporting Emerald's tail fin and the blanket as Jared scrambled up the embankment. When we reached the vehicle, I jumped into its bed, hefting the heavy, wet blanket into the trough. This would be a lovely nest for our precious Pearl. We placed her carefully inside and wrapped the blanket around her. Everything went silent. Even the crickets stopped chirping as Jared secured the trough. We stood back to ensure Emerald was safe. Jared stared at her as she floated peacefully in the water. "Wow," he said, looking dazed. "She's real." I found myself catching my breath too. "Yes, she is." "I'm glad you found her," he said, glancing over at me. I nodded slowly. She's blessed my life. But we need to get her home. Let's go. Jared hopped down from the truck bed, then reached up for my hand. He held my waist as I jumped down, supporting me. We were so close, the warmth from his chest invited me to hug him. But I stepped back and ran to the cab. As we settled into our seats, my nervousness worsened. I shivered as I shut the door, noticing how loud it sounded in the dead silence. Hurry, I urged. Jared started the truck, making me cringe at the volume. As we rumbled past our farmhouse, I prayed Mom and the little boys would stay asleep. So far, so good. We headed out the driveway and down the road. As I looked back, a light came on in Mom's bedroom, and I tensed. Hopefully, it was just time for Benny's midnight feeding. My heart raced and my mouth went dry. I hoped we weren't going to get caught. But there were no signs anybody knew anything, and my nerves settled. I stared out the window into the shadows, lost in thought. We sat in silence. After a while, I glanced at Jared. He looked grim, staring at the road ahead, hands tight on the steering wheel. Thanks for helping me, Jared. Yeah. Well, I didn't want you to be alone. His eyes flicked toward me for a split second before he turned his gaze back to the road. I studied his profile. His strong jaw was set as he concentrated hard. I found myself staring at him, wishing so much was not at stake. I shook myself from my worry, suddenly becoming aware I was clenching my hands together so tightly that my knuckles had turned white. I hope you don't get in trouble for this, I told him, consciously stilling my hands. I'll only get in trouble if I'm caught, he smirked. But if we are, it will be worth it. Especially if we save the mermaid, don't you think? Definitely, I agreed, nodding my head. Her name is Emerald, by the way. Okay, he said. I hope we can get Emerald to safety. For the remainder of the drive, we sat in silence, lost in our own thoughts. My mind was consumed with what I was planning to do. I was scared, but I refused to show it. I didn't want Jared to think I was a coward. When we finally arrived at Patrick's Point, Jared pulled up to the campground parking, which was the closest we could get to the beach. We would have to carry Emerald down the long nature trail. The truck lights shone on a big sign with red letters which read, DANGER. Strong currents and undertows. DONOTSWIM. Ignoring it, I immediately opened the door and jumped out, running to the back of the truck. Jared vaulted up, motioning for me to stay. He lifted Emerald, then transferred part of her weight to me as he jumped down. Together, we carried her down the trail, hoping not to see anyone in the area. The waves were violent and filthy as the strong riptide churned up sand and spray, clawing away at the beach, leaving a bare cliff at the waves' feet. The breeze whipped at me, shoving my hair into my mouth. The visibility wasn't great now either, since it was a partial moon. Boy, I hoped I could see once I was in the ocean. Jared glanced back up to where we'd parked the truck, then back at me. Julie, did you see that sign? Yes, but I have to get Emerald to her people. Can't we place her in the sea and just go home? I met his gaze, letting him know I was determined. I have to make sure she's safe. I'll come back. I promise. I gave him a weak smile. It'll be okay. I can't let you do this. He set Emerald down on the ground gently and stepped forward. If you get hurt, I felt my heart rate pick up as he stepped closer. I don't need you to let me, I said. I'm doing this. As I began to turn away, I hesitated for a moment. Suddenly, he closed the small distance between us and wrapped his arms around me in a warm embrace. In his arms, I felt secure and protected, shielded from the waves that raged only a few feet away. I relished the feeling of being held by him. With a hint of reluctance, I took a step back and placed the tiara on my head. As I sat down in the shallows, the golden webbing enveloped my body in its intricate diamond pattern. Jared picked up Emerald and carefully placed her in my arms, and I positioned her against my shoulder for support. Once I felt confident she was secure, I looked up at Jared. "No matter what, don't dive in for me." He hesitated. "Promise me you won't, Jared." After a moment, he nodded. "Okay, but if you're gone too long, I'm getting your dad." The veins in his neck bulged, and his fists clenched as if he was trying to hold whatever he was feeling inside. I felt bad about leaving him like this, but I knew I had to go. "Okay," I said. "I left a letter on my pillow for my family. My mom will read it if I don't come back by morning." Alarm shot through his face. "I will be back," I promised. He looked at me, his face full of worry. Without warning, a wave surged towards us, crashing over me and Emerald and yanking me off balance. As the riptide seized us and flung us into the turbulent sea, I struggled to catch my breath, but the undertow dragged us down, forcing us into a swirling whirlpool. I tumbled over and over, disoriented by the spinning water. Despite my efforts to hold on, the force of the current was too strong. With a sudden crash, Emerald was ripped from my grasp. "No," I cried out in despair. "Emerald!" My voice was lost in the roar of the torrent. "Emerald!